those acts are held accountable. And then I think a lot of the stuff also comes from not, we need to be ready to have conversations with people, be ready to have more difficult conversations with people to figure out our own unconscious biases and to address these issues. And that's one of the great things that PSG can provide is, again, helping sponsor food and room reservations for those events to create those conversations. So helping support the university administration in bringing in diverse faculty and then providing grants for students to have those conversations on their own.
So one thing that I have been committed to, based on my conversations with people, and what I think is important is this issue of racial justice and having those conversations, making people feel comfortable talking about race. And one thing that I'm committed to is working over the summer to create programming that will be launched either at each school's orientation or soon thereafter. PSG is allotted time at each school's orientation, and I would look at, is it enough time, would we want to use that time to start to build a movement to have those conversations? Could we even have a little bit of time to do a training on racial bias, on implicit bias? So that's something I would be looking at. I've already talked with PSG about building some of that into the budget should I be elected, and I think it's something that's extremely important. Another thing with the some of the recent events that have happened at the Humphrey School, for example, our dean was a little bit slow to call out some of the racist graffiti that happened in the student lounge at Humphrey, and that the state of the Humphrey meeting that was held with a lot of alumni, professors, and students, I asked her a question about what she would do to address it, about where she thinks the school has a place. And honestly, I wasn't satisfied with her answer, and I want to have PSG push each school so that we ultimately are satisfied with their answer to that question.
Yeah, so Noel's actually a good bud. I like him a lot. He's a great guy, so I know where he's coming from on that one. He's actually the one who organized the anti-white supremacy teach-in that's happening at Humphrey right now, along with Emma and Octavia. And one thing I'll note, we're all white here. I don't presume to know, but I mean, it's one thing you need to think about when you're talking about racism. Racism is a systemic problem. It's not a problem of individuals having a minor issue with unconscious bias or graffiti on the wall. It's a whole system of oppression that has existed for years, right? Well, longer than that, longer than that, millennia. And so if you're going to start to combat something like that, one thing you have to realize, I think, is how, like what you've talked about, you're kind of getting out of the way and building space for conversations like teach-in or something like that, especially where it's interdisciplinary, where we're not just talking about race, we're not virtue signaling with posters on the wall where we say like, well, we've got a person of color in the ad, we're good, we solved racism. That's clearly not true. And I know that the vice provost sent out an email even saying like, yeah, we're a little worried, we haven't taken enough action. I think you need to be really relentless with this and make sure that that systemic solution is addressed and that you're doing everything you can to lift it.
So as Mike, you talked about this, how like we are all white up here. What do you guys see as the path here to make sure that the issues that are most important to people of color are indeed being brought to the table? What does that process look like since it's not
people of color to the table?
well, or just like that communication flow. You talk about the capacity issue.
Yeah.
So I've seen a lot of really active student groups in different schools, and I think Noel's a great example. I actually really had a class last semester and really heard him talk outside of that also about the work he's doing. And there are examples of the work he's doing, the work that others are doing in every school, I think. And it's about making sure that those voices that are active, that want to be heard, have the space to be heard. I will not pretend that I know the answers myself, but I think that there are people who do. And stepping out of the way and saying, all right, like, have your voice, like this is, there are a lot of things that, and not just on issues of race. I mean, I think that we need to involve people who have typically been pushed aside and get their views on everything. And just to very quickly address the issue of LGBTQ issues in the school, I talked with a dental student who's the only out dental student that this person knew, and I thought that that was a shame. And I would like to really create kind of a, more of a community across all professional schools that would be a LGBTQ rights group and that would serve that purpose.
Yeah, I've been really impressed by like GSPAC is a group that exists within the Humphrey. And one of their initiatives that they're bringing to the Humphrey is ensuring that folks are correctly pronounced when they go to class. I think that's something we can easily take school-wide. Why haven't we done that one yet? I mean, come on, guys. It's 2018. We keep saying that like the future's going to solve our problem. I think we're going to solve our problem eventually. But like before its unfortunate demise, there's a group of neighborhoods organizing for change. And they did a lot of visionary work around like solutions beyond policing, environmental justice is racial justice, reparation is a realistic thing. And so when we're talking about issuing grants, like we were considering that grant for I forget what, ACEC, I think was the name of the group, where they were going to do a Black History Month event. Their grant didn't fulfill the rules of our grant process, but at the same time, I think we need to be conscious about who's applying for grants and how we can make sure that we've proactively reached out in advance next year, hopefully, to have more Black History Month events before, we're in the middle of the February meeting and where their application is late and we're deciding on that. I think that's a key structural issue.
I was wondering, I don't know, but when you talk about like the systemic issues, you talk about pipeline problems, what would, I guess, either of you say that PSG can do to push schools to address that? I mean, that's a big issue.
So I think one thing is just getting a chance to learn from other schools. One of the big areas that this isn't along racial lines but gender lines, school of business, we just cannot get past 30% women. It's been hanging out there for several years, and I pulled up some numbers on the other schools. A lot of them are over 50 to 60% women. So that's one thing of like getting a chance to find out what your programs might be doing. The other thing I see PSG being able, so somewhat brainstorming ideas of one thing we're hoping to do along both the racial and gender lines at Carlson is we host a women's leadership conference every year. This year we're hoping to have to sponsor high schoolers to come from the high school that Carlson has been partnering with to give them opportunities to create connections with the Carlson network so that as they go through and come the barriers, they can feel they have resources to work with.
Awesome. I think there was someone in the audience who wanted to ask a question if they still had it.
Yeah, I'm so excited about that. So I tweeted him asking if I could ask my question verbally.
Could you just say your name and...
Hi, I'm Joshua P. from Minneapolis. There's a lot of questions, but one thing that did come up earlier is like, well, how would you react? How would you respond to university staff administration that might be opposed to or antagonistic to maybe something that you want to bring? In any case, disagreement. We don't often think about student government as having to create foreign policies, but with the historic split of GAPSA, the Graduate Association, Professional Student to COGS, PSG, and MSA, how would you react to not necessarily university administrators, but other student governments who are opposed to some of your initiatives?
I think it was.
Yeah, I think I got it. Oh, okay, started.
I think that's a lot.
Yeah, that's something that has come up. I think that it's a weak point, but it also is, I mean, one of the reasons that GAPSA split in the first place is because there are differing interests among graduate students and professional students, and sometimes those just can't be reconciled. But I think it is a weakness when it comes time to really strongly advocate for things with the university. And so I would look forward to forming stronger relationships with COGS, MSA, and figuring out where there are things that we have somewhat distorted views on. How can is there some piece of this that we can align on, and at least we know that that will be successfully pushed through the administration, or it will have a better chance. And then maybe on some of those other issues, you know, it may be difficult and we will have to advocate on our own, but I wouldn't not push for something simply because COGS were against it. I think it's important to try to find common ground, but if at the end of the day, professional students do have substantially and legitimately different issues, you know, I think we need to push ahead with those.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It's okay to disagree. That's one of those things with, you know, I think to your question, the elephant in the room, we've had some issues dealing with COGS, right, where we were talking about pass-through funding, and it put a huge issue in our laps where we were like, whoa, bud, you know, and then Rachel had to go out and network with all the councils and make sure that everybody was still going to be able to get the pass-through funding, because it's a key source of funding for all of our councils. I think, you know, the political pressure can go both ways. It's okay to play the political game and to say, like, you know, we can pressure you to do things as much as you can pressure us to do things. It isn't necessarily about diplomacy and getting along. Of course we could do that and get in the room and hopefully we'll have this great relationship. But to your question, if we don't, there's, I think, a lot of ways that we could be the leader, the ambitious, excited group of students, of professional students with the additional clout of being professional students, that we could be the one leading the conversation. That's what I would like to see more from PSG, is that we're the ones on the forefront saying, this is our agenda, this is what we want done, instead of being pulled along at the last minute by an issue that suddenly explodes when we're in the middle of something. So I think there is a political game to be played, and disputes are okay. We don't need to completely, you know, throw everything away because we disagree on something.
So I think one area that I've seen really effective partnering with them is working with them from day one and identifying issues. Partially also working with the group of students that serves as ambassadors to the regents of the university. That is a group made up of more than just professional students. That's another group that has representatives of PhD, ACEC, and MSA. So identifying those areas of common ground early, and then also if we are not on the same page, being able to identify why we're not on the same page, what are the different needs of the students we're representing, and is this a university-wide solution we're pushing for, or is this a solution that we need to push for within our own schools? We're spending a lot of time with PSG talking about the university as a whole. The truth is, students coming together and getting recommendations from other programs, we have a lot to change our daily lives within our programs by working with representatives in those areas. So I think that if you do run into conflict with COGS and MSA, it's really about taking a step back and recognizing, again, why that difference exists, and figuring out how to move forward to generate the most value for professional students.
We have our 4 minutes.
I think we can extend the debate back to actually the second one.
Or whatever it is. I guess, what are the differences? Question both. You both mentioned there's a difference between professional student and graduate student. We split apart. Clearly, we have different interests. What do you think those are? And what, you know, obviously, what things do you can share?
I mean, some of the clear differences, to me at least, are most graduate students as opposed to professional students. I mean, the way that they're funded, that they get paid, that they have stipends, healthcare, it's kind of different than the setup for most professional students at least. And that's something that those fundamental differences aren't going to change. I don't think, I don't necessarily think they're going to change. What we do share is the fact that we're all pursuing more education, the fact that we're all interested in a topic that we care deeply about, and that that's what we're pursuing in school. Hopefully that we all want ultimately to make the university a better place as a whole. So not just ourselves, but for those around us as well. And I think that a lot of people do want to have, you know, regardless of the program and the impact on some of outside issues, so whether it's DACA or there are other political things that we want to have a voice on. I think that those can be some of the common grounds in just acknowledging and finding the root of some of the differences. Like you said, figuring out why there is disagreement and then just being okay with that. You know, we don't have to be the same, and will work better together if we realize that and are honest about it, rather than just have a blind hostility, which has happened before, so.
Yeah, I think, a lot of the things, I think the biggest difference, between the structures is just that professional students, we tend to have a more cohesive program with our cohorts, so we have kind of easier access for a council representation model, which is not necessarily something that's as easy for COGS to do when you have departments that are just 4 or 5 students. We do, however, probably need to learn from them. We have come to realize that there are students who fall outside of the councils within PSG, and so I think that's going to be definitely an area where we are looking to learn from COGS and have some overlap in the coming year.
Yeah.
But I think, yeah. Do you have anything?
Did we answer your question, Josh?
Yeah.
Thanks, bud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Glad to participate, thank you.
With that, we will move on to closing statements. Each of you has 2 minutes, and I believe, I wanted to say Michael will be starting us off.
Sounds good. So what I've talked about today, and I mean it very seriously, is the degree to which I'm impressed, astounded, amazed by the brilliance and curiosity of the professional student group. They're amazing people who can accomplish great things if only they have a student government that is engaged and ready to act. I think the clear choice in this election is going to come down to, do you want a student government that is the status quo and getting by to get by, or do you want to go there and let's figure out what's possible when we're really ambitious and we try to do all those important things that we've discussed today? That's addressing issues of racial inequity, addressing a better deal for dual degree students, I think is an obvious choice that a lot of people are talking about as something that's necessary. We have in front of us an obvious choice of, do we want to engage and make sure that our community going forward is unified just within the 10,000 students that will govern, and that all the future professional students that are going to come through this college have the opportunities to engage and become a better population for the future generations. That's going to require a special kind of leadership, and I have found it. I found it throughout every individual college. I'm telling you, there are incredible people in each of the schools, and they're available, ready, excited to be activated, and they just need the opportunity for somebody to say, okay, let's do it. Let's make something happen. When you meet a leader like Noel, he's somebody who's got a ton of ideas, and he's ready to be activated to make change at this school. And so I'm very excited to be the next PSG president, because I believe that I'm somebody who can bring people together, I have experience doing it, and I'm ready to lead.
My vision for PSG is that it is a resource for students to enhance their lives, enhance their wellness while they're at school, and ultimately their careers. And I believe that a big part of approaching this is making sure everybody is educated, that PSG is ready to meet students where they're at, and also that in our goals we take on, that we are thoughtful in making sure that our concrete results are actually delivering that value we want to. The university is a complex place, and it's important to make sure we understand what's at play, what's been tried before, in order to ensure that we have success in the initiatives we take on moving into the future. I have experience in working in organizations where you're identifying places where people's voices haven't been heard because there's a gap in communication, and in finding ways to bring together what's being heard on the ground with the incentives of upper management. I'd be looking to bring forward professional students' interests through that type of advocacy. I think it is also very important that we build up that advocacy piece, again with PSG, and establishing those lines of communication with the university, so when we have ideas that we need to implement, we are prepared to do so.
I view PSG as an organization that doesn't just give out grants for the sake of giving out grants. An organization that has some bigger purpose behind it. So increasing diversity at the school, creating a better climate for all students, making sure that everyone's voice is heard, and that student voices are effectively advocated for with the university administration. And I think that I have the experience and the interest in making all of those things happen. One thing we've talked about a bit is strategy and advocating strongly but strategically for the interests of professional students with the administration, and making sure that we really key in on the issues that we're going to be effective on, and that we continue looking for ways to advance other issues that are important to professional students. One thing that we haven't talked as much about but have touched on is the infrastructure piece of it, and the infrastructure of PSG, and how it's hard to accomplish some of these larger scale goals if you don't have a solid infrastructure. The current PSG governance and Rachel have done incredible work in shoring that up. But as we've talked about, the university administration just expects turnover year after year, or maybe every 2 years. It's a lot harder for us to be able to be a strong voice. It's harder for us to push back against university policies. So having cohesion year to year, governing board to governing board, and really making sure that that's kind of underlying everything, I think is an important factor to all of these topical things, to all these advocacy-based things, to putting students' voices there. So I would also like to focus on that piece, and I have the time management skills to be able to do both of those and make sure that we're as effective as we can be. So, thanks.
Thank you. I would just like to remind everyone, I'm sorry those dates aren't quite correct. The debate, or the voting is Monday, but it is March 5th through Wednesday, March 7th. Voting opens that Monday at 8 a.m. and it closes Wednesday at 8 p.m. And you'll go to gopherlink.umn.edu to submit your ballot, and there will be more emails about this as we get closer to Election Day. Again, that's March 5th through March 7th. And with that, join me in thanking our candidates for being here tonight.